are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and things might look a little different behind me today if you're watching on YouTube. But if you are watching on YouTube, you will notice that I am joined, once again, as usual, by the one and the only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be back. We took a week off last week. I moved to the Midwest. And so that's weird. I'm in Blackhawks territory now.
Pulling back the curtain.
Yeah, I'm in Blackhawks territory now, and it's weird because games start at 6 p.m. and my entire life games started at 7. And
yeah, didn't you hint at like that we weren't going to have a show 2 weeks ago when we were last on?
Yeah, because it turns out that moving is stressful, and I had a feeling it might be a little stressful to try to put together a show for last Sunday. So I hinted at it just in case we ended up missing last week.
And that turned out to be exactly the case, which was...
And it turns out we needed it because
Which was fine by me anyway, because it was a weird weekend with a 1 o'clock and then a 3 o'clock start. So it was like trying to get all that stuff together. We didn't even know when we were going to record a show, if we did record a show.
Right.
We're like, do we do the morning thing and skip the Sunday game? Do we wait until after the Sunday game's over and try to do a night one? It was just too much.
And in the meantime, I went 72 hours with a combined 6 hours of sleep. So that was fun. Yeah, and that included a 15-hour drive towing a trailer with 2 cats in the back seat. So
yeah. That feels a little bit like my week to an extent. I mean, not quite the moving aspect, but I feel like I didn't get a lot of sleep because there was 4 games this week.
Right, and there were 4 games this week, and honestly, they were all pretty exciting games. When you get Flyers Penguins, you're always gonna get fireworks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but by the matchup, yes. It was like there was a reason to be amped up for the 3 against Pittsburgh. And I think the Buffalo game, even to round out the weekend, it was like, look at what they did the day before. Saturday was a really good day. And you go, okay, let's see how they carry that over into Sunday. Maybe they can make it a big weekend. And they did. So, yeah, I think you're right. There was a lot of excitement. Anticipation for the games. I don't know if we can call every single one of them over the course of the week exciting. I think after a while, the Buffalo games lost their luster in terms of...
That's fair.
As
but
the game
it's tough to get up for Buffalo.
We kind of like, let's just like when I went on 97.3 on Monday, the question I got was that the Flyers playing well, or was that Buffalo just being as bad as we think they are?
Being Buffalo,
kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
Buffalo's kind of a dumpster fire.
Well, good news for the Flyers, they get them again on Tuesday. So good news for them.
And that is the only respite this week, and we'll talk about that later in the show when we look ahead.
Not completely. I mean, there's pieces, there's a big piece of the story with these Washington games that we're going to have to get into.
You're right. I suppose we will have to touch on Tom Wilson. But either way, we do have some Pittsburgh games to talk about in the first place. Those games were fun. Obviously Tuesday, maybe a little less fun for the Flyers. But Thursday was certainly a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, Tuesday shouldn't have been as less fun as you're making it out to be. Because I look at, everybody I saw, a lot of people I saw were saying about Saturday's game, oh, that was there for the taking. That game was there for the taking. I thought Tuesday's was there for the taking, quite honestly. They played a decent first period. They were tied. They got the lead, and then for 10 minutes forgot how to play. And then after that, found a way to get back into the game. When they scored the goal, when they did to make it 3-2, you're going, okay, there's still, 10, 12 minutes left?
We have a game here, right? It ain't over yet.
And there's a lot of time left to figure it out, and they were playing well to that point. But then it just started to, they gave the one up right away to follow up with it again, and it's like...
It's the dagger.
Right.
It's hard to bounce back from that.
But you were getting that sense that, there's enough time still to get something going. You need one more... Get it, you don't want to see these games get to overtime, but get it to overtime and see what happens. And
you'd rather 2 points, even if Pittsburgh has to get one, than not getting any.
That's what made Thursday so big,
Yeah.
Thursday, to win on Thursday in regulation.
The way you won Thursday.
The way you won, exactly. Because I even said it on Friday when I went on 97.3. You would have accepted the overtime result with a win if you knew that you were coming back from down 3-0 in the game.
Oh yeah, you will always take an overtime point if you're coming back from 3 goals down, for sure.
Yeah, especially with the timing of the third goal. There was 6.5 minutes left. You're going, all right, it took that long to get there, but you got there. Now just play the last 6.5 the right way.
Right, conserve a little energy.
And
get ready for 3-on-3.
And get to a spot where you're good, exactly. You're a good 3-on-3 team. You play overtime really well. get it there and see what happens. And I mean,
and then Captain Claude knocked.
Yeah, well, and look, there's no guarantees in overtime against Pittsburgh because
Sidney
when you
Crosby,
throw Crosby
Evgeny
out there,
Malkin.
and that was another storyline, by the way, that we didn't mention, because Tuesday the disappointment I think was not that the game wasn't necessarily there for the taking in terms of the score at times, because 3-1 they took a long time to get that second one, to get it back to 1. They gave it right back and it felt like a dagger. But when you kind of find out like morning of, oh, by the way, Sidney Crosby's not playing tonight because he's on the COVID list.
Yeah, the expectation shifts to a win.
Yeah, pretty much.
Frankly.
Yeah, and what you got was, they didn't face Kasperi Kapanen in the first 2 times around. He wasn't able to play in the first couple games of the season. So that was a dynamic that was new.
Sure.
Evgeny Malkin actually decided to be good for a game instead of being invisible like he was in the first 2 games of this season series, and things like that. So that's another part of it. And defensively, the Flyers forgot how to play in certain areas, because why is Brian Rust around the net all by himself? Why is, I'm trying to figure out who else in there. Why is Shane Gostisbehere passing to Kapanen when he's not on your team?
Yeah, overall, just not the effort you want to see. The nice thing is we did get the effort, and I was honestly really worried going into Thursday's game, especially when Thursday's game started the way it did. Well, right, you go down 3 goals in the first 5 minutes.
Well, how about this one too? I was worried about Thursday's game because, for me, how about an hour before the game starts, they tell you Joel Farabee's not playing tonight too, and this is the guy who scored the 2 goals in Tuesday's game.
Right, he was he was really the only beacon of hope in that Tuesday game.
Well, and he's been on a hot streak. Everybody knew it, and you go, great, now he's out on top of it. And you go, all right, not that it's not possible for them to make a run in that game and to try to find a way to win. I mean, let's this way. How many games did they win without Sean Couturier all that time?
Sure.
They did. But it's like
this team has found a way to win.
And it came coupled with the news that Crosby was available now. And it's like, oh, so Pittsburgh gets their best player back and the Flyers lose their hottest player.
Yep.
Great, And it just spelled, like, it's funny how that worked that way, because it spelled that, Tuesday looked like it should have been a win. It wasn't, because Crosby wasn't playing, and they didn't win the game. And then Crosby's playing, and it looks like it's going to go exactly the way you think it is with those first 5 minutes. And then the Flyers rally back, and they, I kind of said it before, Alain Vigneault had his Peter Laviolette moment, so to speak, called the timeout.
He sure did.
Pointed at the scoreboard and said, this is how much time's left.
Let's go.
It's not over. Let's go get one first and figure out and keep going. And they did, and that's... It's as simple as that. So,
and Brian Elliott, after the first 5 minutes, again, where I don't know how much he's at fault, but at least one of them was soft, if I recall correctly.
Not in Thursday's game.
In Thursday, wasn't the one kind of soft, a little dribbler through his legs?
No, you're thinking of Saturday.
I'm thinking of Saturday. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because Thursday, in the first 5 minutes, it was... trying to remember the first. The first one was off of Sanheim's glove. It was a point shot by Letang.
Right. Okay, that's not on Elliott.
So it deflects and changes, like, not just changes direction, but the speed changes dramatically because it's not a stick; it's a glove.
It went from a fastball to a knuckler.
Right, and
no excuse there.
And Malkin sticks nearly in the way too. Like it looked like for a second they were going to be able to say it hit Malkin's stick. It didn't, but he's got that to deal with too. So that one goes in. Then you had the 2-on-1, or I'm sorry. The 2-on-1 that they get the save. Giroux's coming back to try to play the second guy, but there's no third guy, and Mark Friedman, of all people, scores that goal.
Right. Mark freaking Friedman.
And that one, I think you're right. Like, that one goes through the legs, but it's because he's not anticipating. Like, Claude Giroux bats the puck back into the slot.
Oh, he did. Right.
Like, instead of knocking it to the corner, Elliott's not ready for the guy coming straight down the middle, uncovered. After the puck goes in a direction he wasn't prepared for it to go, because who would knock it back with their hand into the middle of the ice like that?
And Friedman healed it a little bit too, if I recall correctly. So
probably
it didn't
a little,
even...
but it was such a quick development that it wouldn't have mattered if he did or not.
No, Brian Elliott wouldn't have had much of a chance either way. You're right.
And then the next one was the 3-on-2. Again, they were late getting back, and it was off of a turnover, and they had 3 guys. They were able to make one extra pass, and the guy was going to the net. And he tipped it in, and it went up and over.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
I didn't, see anything wrong with that. Yes, in Saturday's game, different story. I think that the first 2 probably aren't problems because, I mean, Malkin does what he has to do and gets Elliott down and frozen on the first one, which is on a power play to begin with, and then Sanheim gets knocked over which doesn't allow Elliott to even get back into position, which, quite frankly, I'm happy about because I've seen Brian Elliott try to stretch out to make that save on the wraparound, and it doesn't usually end well for him in terms of his availability. So don't worry about not getting over for that one. I wish it was just played better.
And sometimes Evgeny Malkin just makes a spectacular play because he's Evgeny Malkin.
Right. And
that's part of it too.
Right. And then they got the other one because, again, same thing. Here's a power play. Here's 3 guys. The rest of the 4 guys on the ice are out of position or get caught out of position. And you go 1, 2, 3 in the net. And there's nothing he can do about that.
Okay.
It was the third one because you're down to 2 minutes left in the second period. You're leading 3-2. And that's the only one that I can really, truly find that I sit there and I go, before you even finish, the thought, it's soft. It's soft every single time.
Yep.
It causes nightmares for Flyers fans because it looks like another goal. It's, it was bad. It was just really bad. And it set you, like, even the fourth one, which I know people are going to say, like, oh, his rebound control, or whatever. It's like, that's still a transition rush where it's not that complicated to get a third guy back.
Right.
In that situation. And instead they went for a line change and missed badly.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes that happens. But Brian Elliott, even after allowing those couple early goals in the Thursday game, again, we talked about them not really being his fault. But after that, he showed the composure of a veteran. I don't know if Carter Hart stays in the game there. And I don't know if we're necessarily talking about it enough. The fact that Alain Vigneault left Brian Elliott in there and Brian Elliott played the way he did on Thursday night. Because he played spectacular hockey.
I don't know. I mean, I was surprised they left him in a little bit.
Me too, honestly.
Just because it would seem par for the course, and I don't think that there was any reason why you had to play for tomorrow or whatever. You didn't have to
there's
play
no back-to-back you're right about.
You didn't have to play for the future matchup because you could have just as easily said, oh, you know what, Elliott will go on Saturday and we'll get him right back in there, but we're gonna have to go to Carter Hart this time for right now, and it's right. 4 minutes into the game. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, as we were saying, it wasn't his fault they were down 3-0. It was the rest of the team, and instead of pulling the goalie to send the message, they called the timeout to send the message, and it worked to every angle. It got them back in the game. They were playing better from there. The thing to me though was that Brian Elliott played the way a veteran should play and had the composure and all that stuff. I don't really remember him getting tested too much until the third period when that Malkin chance came up. Like, there were only a couple that I think even came into play where it was, oh yeah, here's a big save for him, here's a good chance, but I don't really remember much. I feel like a lot was kept to the outside. It was very simple, and it wasn't too much, filled with too much pressure for him that he wasn't able to find a way to make the saves he needed to.
Right. Well, I mean, he did make the saves he needed to, and the Flyers did get a win there. Moving on to, at time of recording, last night's game. We're talking about Saturday night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, just not really the effort you want to see for a full 60 minutes.
No, not really, I would say. And the problem is that there was a certain point during the third period, and it's hard to tell when specifically. I mean, it was already kind of a lagging third period to begin with, but you were still in the game for the first 10 minutes because Pittsburgh was letting you hang around in the first 10 minutes of that third period, kind of.
Right.
It was still a tie game. It's still there for the taking. Once they got scored on, after about 3 or 4 minutes, you kind of saw already, you're like, the legs aren't there. They're losing battles. It's not looking good,
Yeah, and honestly, as we sit here on Sunday morning, obviously we're talking about the Washington Capitals game being tonight as this podcast goes live. You don't love seeing that on the first half of a back-to-back.
No, I mean, the hard part for me to judge, and I know that people are going to sit there and go, why are people making the excuse they're tired? Like, that's not an excuse. I'm not making it as an excuse. First of all, I'm making it as an observation. I'm saying they looked
factually tired. They looked tired.
They looked tired. They looked gassed. They looked like they spent every ounce of energy they had, and that's the end of the story with that. And it is a concern when you have this amount of games left, but they didn't lean on it as an excuse. Alain Vigneault turned around and said after the game, they had the same schedule we did, so there's no reason for that to be the problem. It's just that we couldn't execute.
Right. When you play the same team for 6 days, you're playing the same exact team on the same exact schedule. You can't use that schedule as an excuse to be tired in the third game.
And I know they're not going to, but to me, I think that part of that also has to do with the COVID situation still, because you've got guys who are trying to find their conditioning again. I mean, do you think that Travis Konechny is going to be, he's probably getting there, and he scored a goal in the game on Saturday, so don't get me wrong, but it's your third game back from 2 weeks off.
Right.
What do you think's going to happen the third time around? Even a guy like Claude Giroux, who came back over a week ago, still a lot of hockey in 9-10 days.
Yeah.
He played Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. By the time you get to that second Saturday, you're pretty spent, and he really spent a lot of energy the game before.
I was going to say, Claude expended a lot of energy on Thursday. Claude Giroux had a real captain game on Thursday.
And I wonder if it would have been different if it didn't have to be like that. If the game results in a 4-3 decision in a different way, then maybe you're not spending every ounce of energy you have on that third period to try to get back into the game. That's the problem. It's like that where you if you didn't have to come back from down 3-0 in the game to try to win,
right,
maybe you have more energy in that Saturday game. But they looked energized for the first little bit. It's not like they didn't, at all in the game. I think that they had something. It was when it came down to
the
crunch
gas
time
tank
and
was
down
running
the stretch. It was exactly. And I kind of chalked part of Tuesday's game up to something that I hope will come into play on Sunday when they play Washington, which is Pittsburgh had fans back in the building on Tuesday, and even without Crosby, which is obviously a huge hit. Like imagine sitting there saying, and I'll use Claude Giroux as an example, or Carter Hart. Let's use Carter Hart as an example. Imagine sitting there saying it's been a year since you've been allowed to go watch a game in person, and the guy that you get most excited to see
the morning of the game
isn't allowed to play.
Yeah.
Essentially the morning of the game,
Yeah, that hurts. That can really put a pin in the balloon.
Right. But I think just the overall presence makes a difference on the team, because even though that guy is missing and it's disappointing from a fan perspective.
But even though that guy is missing, they have their mascot back to go 4,000 times a game. So obviously that's why the Pittsburgh Penguins won on Tuesday. Yeah. It's the mascot with the air horn, and then he's also the one banging the drum.
Okay, I didn't know if it was something like that or if it was just a sound effect that the people upstairs play.
Unless it has changed, or unless they're playing some supreme movie magic, it is the mascot from when I was there in the last playoff series there, the Sean Couturier on one leg playoff series.
Okay, so it's their mascot. Iceberg?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I believe that is his name. Yeah,
I'm just saying. So this thing runs around with the air horn.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's who you can direct your hate at.
Don't worry about it, because I'm sure that when the fans are back at Wells Fargo Center, Gritty's looking forward to it. So.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't know how much Gritty will be allowed to interact with fans.
Gritty's been damn near banished.
I'm sure.
Well, when the new protocol, and I say that when the new protocols came in, they had a stage for him that was set up behind the player benches, which was hysterical enough. As a matter of fact, one of the funny things that I found later on is I just happened to be, every now and then when a moment comes up, and from the angle that I had for all of this time, I'm sitting there going, oh, you know what? When they got a game to overtime the one night, so I said, all right, let me just put the camera on for a second on my phone just to see if anything big happens, and that's when Scott Lawton scores the goal. So I have that on there to see, and I actually, of course, I'm sitting there because I actually thought it was going wide from my angle because it was coming across this way. So when it went in, I wasn't overly prepared. I started to turn it back the other way. So it's a little like the camera moves during the moment that you really want to see, because for a split second, and as the bench jumps up and things like that. But in the background, as they're all celebrating on the ice, Gritty does a backflip into a ball pit.
It's fantastic.
Which I didn't notice the first couple times I watched it, and now it's the only thing I notice.
Yeah, I saw that clip. It's pretty fantastic.
So it's pretty funny and stuff like that. But it wasn't long after that they came out with the new protocols that were, nothing within so many feet behind the benches, take the glass out, all that stuff. And I mean, the Flyers did something that was interesting. I don't know if every team's doing this. I assume they are now, but I hadn't noticed it originally. There's netting behind where the players sit right now.
Okay.
To try to keep, everything close enough, I
Right.
suppose. But now it really takes a new dynamic because you're going to put people somewhere. I mean, there's not exactly,
Right.
there's not a lot of space down there that you can say, oh, we can separate through this. It's like you're going to have to utilize that space at some point.
Right. Well, we've seen on the broadcast. I noticed. I made a point to notice where people were sitting in Pittsburgh when they had people there, and it seemed like they were in the upper half of the lower bowl, and I presume the upper bowl.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Now you're going tonight as part of your coverage for Sports Talk Philly and 97.3 ESPN. So I'm curious, what do you know what the protocols are for tonight, or are you going to find out when you get there?
I know some details. I don't know. I'm not saying I don't know all details or there's details that are missing. It's some of the stuff that's being told to us I'm going to have to experience before I can actually truly talk about what.
Okay.
Well, truly talk about what it's going to be like because it's going to be a little bit of a new venture for us.
Okay.
Let me finish with the Gritty point really quick because Gritty ended up in the the upper level, by the way.
Okay.
After all of that.
Well, I'm curious if that changes tonight.
No, it probably still will be the same because they've already said that they're. I know that I already read somewhere they're getting rid of the stage setting and things like that. That's changing.
Okay.
I mean, let's this way. You got to remember that before this came to be, the extent of people in the building was the media members. Gritty had a stage. There was one family that was being welcomed in as part of their frontline efforts and things like that for a frontline worker's family to be able to go to a game in the middle of this, which basically amounted to 4 people at most sometimes.
I believe it was family of 4 was the idea of it
from a fan's perspective, and then
coaches and players.
No, and then and then basically everybody who helps the game actually operate: the coaches, the players, trainers, ice staff, off ice NHL staff, like things like that. And apparently the press box where we were typically was being utilized by scouts and team management.
Okay.
So that this way they had room to space up because they have, and you've been up there once, so you do know a little bit. They have like an office, kind of. It's like their own little mini suite, if you will, where Chuck Fletcher sits, where Brent Flair sits, where half the time they're sitting with Bobby Clark because he's there, things like that. And they sit there and they have their own little space and they don't frequently come out, like even to just like in between periods, they're kind of just doing their job at that point. And the media the media and the scouts and even the scratched players for the game are still sitting scattered among the rest of it, right?
Okay.
So now that remains exactly the way that it is. That's not changing. So we are not going back to sit in the normal press box just because it opened back up. And that has to do with the teams needing access to a space where they can work and do what they do.
Sure.
And I guess that also did not change too much.
Yeah, team operations are going to come before media.
My knowledge is this. So that stays the same. Fans are first of all, fans, by the way, are going to either be sitting in groups of 2 or 4. They're not selling anything different than that at the moment.
Right.
The spaces, as from what I gathered, I saw one picture that showed 2 on like the end of a row, then 4 in the middle of the row, and then 2 at the end of the row with like 3 or 4 seats between them.
Okay.
To create the separation, and then probably separated by about 3 rows again, like up or down.
Okay.
So there's plenty of space. I mean, that's about the amount of space we had with the tables set up in the media and things like that. So believe me, it's more than enough space. Don't worry about that.
And we're talking about 3,100 fans, right?
Yes, that's the number. So that part of it, pretty expected. And I believe that the number that I was told when it came to seating arrangements was that they have to be 12 feet off of the glass in the end zones and 25 off of the wherever from the sides because
the low glass.
Because the player bench has no glass behind it now. The penalty box has no glass off to the sides of it to create an open air setting. Okay. And you have to like open up this whole, like you had to open it up in a different way.
Right.
Now, so I go back
because of those NHL protocols that we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the show.
Right. Now, for everybody else who's going in normally like that, apparently here's the new rules not rules, but like the new protocols. You do not get to like just park wherever you want. You're getting a parking space that you would I guess purchase. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's purchase, reserve. I'm assuming purchase, but you know what I mean. Like, and you reserve it based on where your seat is. So you're going to go into an entrance that corresponds with where your seat is going to be located. So basically, like, there is no walk around the concourse to kill some time.
Right. There's no hangout before the game, in theory.
Right. So that's the first part. And then mostly everything at this point is contactless. Like, when it comes to the restrooms, they've installed contactless everything. When it comes to paying for food and drink, it's contactless payment, and you go up and you can go there, and it's going to be limited basically in terms of how much is probably open and things like that. But like, even fan gear is going to be open just with limited capacity, and they're going to have a line outside that kind of directs traffic for how many people are inside at one time. It works out. Masks are obviously still the thing,
of course.
My understanding is that it's not that it's not going to be overly enforced. Like, they're not going to kick people out right away if they see somebody without one, but the object is, if you're at your seat and you are not in the moment eating or drinking something, then it needs to be on. And they will give like a warning the first time around, and then the second time, like, it could be you're done.
They're escalating,
right? Because and look, they're not trying to be that strict with it to an extent. Like, they're just willing to let people understand about it, but like, at the same time, it's like, if you're going to take the opportunity to be one of 3,100 in the building, it's on you to be responsible and to do the right thing, So that is what it is. So for me, I'm going to go back into the building. I have to use the same entrance I've already used all year. I go through the same screening process. That's not changing. I now go back to the way I used to do things and go to the elevators.
Okay.
I'm taking an elevator all the way up to the top of the building again.
Okay.
Instead of going into and it'll let us off at the same spot where the press box entrance usually is. Instead of taking the press box entrance and going just straight into where we normally go, we're now going through the double doors that take us into the new open air, or the relatively new open air balcony section that was for standing room. There is one row of seating as you go through, as you go around the rest of the the balcony level. There's one row of seating at the very front. That is where the media will be placed. They are numbering spots for people so that it's easy to identify, stuff like that. The unfortunate part, and this is probably the only inconvenience, and I'll see how it goes. This is what I mean when I say I have to see what it's like to kind of give a full explanation. They do not have, that section of seating does not have a tabletop. Now, I was a little bit surprised they didn't just throw seats behind, like, the drink rails where, everything isn't just say, here, you're spaced out. But, all right, I get it. There's seats already installed there. It makes it easier instead of trying to get, because it's not like it's a low section. It's a standing room section. So you'd have to get, like, high-top chairs to make it work, and I don't know if people want to do that anyway, so...
Yeah, at this point, probably not.
Right, so instead, we're going to be sitting literally as, like, these few people in the one row of seating up there. They ended up, instead of, like, being able to... Because they said they can't install tables, and there's no railing there or something like that. So they bought, like, portable desktop tables that fold, that we're going to be able to pick up once we get to where the general seating area is, and then take to the seat where we're going to work.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, is it a little bit of an extra step? Sure it is, but at the same time, it's,
it's making it work.
It's making it work, and obviously, I think their top priority when it came down to it was going to be as soon as they could let fans in to start to build back up, because let's put it this way, it's 15% capacity, and that there's enough people out there that are sitting there going, I've been waiting for this for what feels like forever, I'm going, no matter what, then
those tickets will be sold.
Well, then you'll sell out the 3,100, and you'll have 3,100 people who go in, and presumably either, probably, like, I would say you'll have, like, 1,000 people paying for parking, because it's... Not everybody, right, like, it's probably 1,000 cars for 3,100 people probably, or something like that. Yep. And then, so that's 1,000.
Everybody's going to average, say, a hot dog.
Right. And then it's the food and the merchandise.
Right. We start talking about the revenue, and it's more than just the ticket price, and it turns into a decent little bit of money, and the Flyers do get to recoup something times however many home games are left this season. And obviously, if more seats open up for them, obviously they will, I'm sure, take them. But
but that's the
right.
unique aspect of it, and now this is going to get interesting too, because I've never covered a game with that few people in the building when there's fans allowed. Like, it's one thing to do it in an empty building,
Right.
and then you go, all right, I know what I'm.
Right, you've done it in an empty building. You've done it in a full building. What's it look like in between?
Right, kind of, and not only that, but like what I'm curious about is like
I'm curious how much crowd noise they pump in.
Right, like how much is that still a thing? How much noise can 3,100 people make? Because there were moments in Pittsburgh where it doesn't sound like a ton. Like, you can hear it a little bit, but it doesn't sound like a ton, and maybe that's just them drowning it out with the crowd noise that's supposed to make it sound like it's 20,000, not 3,000. But
right,
yeah,
I hope
I'll
they
take
don't do much with
3,000.
the crowd noise.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way: I know that I'll miss, or not miss, but I won't miss or I have missed, I should say. That's what I'm looking for. I have missed the people who are there. Like, you never thought you'd miss this, but I've missed the people who are there who yell shoot at the power play, who get, like, just in general the noise too. Like, the other day I caught myself watching the Claude Giroux goal from a few years ago with against Boston in overtime right before they made the playoffs in that year that Giroux was outstanding. Should have
won the Hart. Yeah,
and
at least been nominated.
Right,
Andre Kopitar, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but the sound that comes through the broadcast on that clip, and I was there for that game anyway, so I obviously was there to see it in person and hear the crowd in person. But the noise that you hear just on a broadcast feed is like that. That's what's missing. It feels like it really does, because you just get to the point where you're like, this is. This is everything. It's like, this is what they play for. They play to play in front of people and to entertain like that. And it's been one thing to do it from home all this time, to have be in there by yourself and try to entertain people who are stuck at home. But it I believe there was a comment. It was a baseball player who said, this, like, it's the reward for being a functioning society to be able to go to stuff like this and to do things like this.
Right. Like,
and
for example,
sports.
In New Zealand, full-blown everything. They're good. They have full-blown attendance at sports events.
Right. And but like, it feels like things are taking the right step forward to get back to this.
Yeah.
And you know what? To be honest with you, I didn't think it was going to happen like this. And when I say like this, meaning there was talk about, it could happen in time for their next game. And that quickly, it was like the city shut it down because the city raised the minimum from 250 to 500, or the maximum from 250 to 500, and the arena was that quick to say, well, that's like how much staff we need to operate the building, so we can't open.
Right.
And we're stuck waiting. And I honestly chalked up the next 4 games coming up this week and said, forget that. Forget those 4. And if you can happen to, like, and I started to count it down because I believe they're already, like, they've played 22. This will be their 22nd game of the season.
Okay.
I believe they've played upwards of, or once they're done with this week, they'll have played 14 home games.
Wow.
Now, granted, by the time they're done, it'll also have been 25 games in the books, so don't get me wrong. It's like
14 versus 11? Yeah, it's not crazy.
So, but nonetheless, you're going, that's half of your home games this year. So you've already lost half of the home games.
Yeah, we are like hard. We're hard closing in on the halfway point of the season. Like, it's coming quick.
But
like, we just hit the quarter point with our last show 2 weeks ago, and we're already talking about the halfway mark. Maybe not next week, but about the week after that.
Right. And maybe, like I said there, I'm like, okay, maybe they get them in time for the following, like, the following 2 weeks, because I think, like, next week, like this week they're home for 4, then next week they're on the road for 4, then they're home for 4 again, but that was it for the entire, like, that's it for the entire month of March, I think. So it was like,
right, yeah, they're flipping.
Maybe
weeks.
They get, but you go, maybe they get the 4 games at the end of the month, maybe. But if they don't, then are you, like, is it really worth it to go that crazy at that point for what, 8 home games, 10 home games, whatever it's going to be?
Right. Well,
then, to then sit there and say, or like to then at least sit there and say something about, like, set yourself up for the playoffs at that point. Like,
Right.
set your sights on mid-May and go, all right, how many can we get in at that point, or whatever. But
Right.
they really did bring it together quickly. And I respect that because it seemed like the day after all of that talk happened, and they said, oh, we have to wait. Like a day or two after was when the state went back and said, okay, now it's up to 15%. It doesn't matter the size of your venue either. And it's like,
Well,
all right, now you've got a shot at something. Now it's just and basically, look, the bottom line was, and I not to make it about anything other than the sports aspect of it, but my thought was, well, it's in the hands of the city of Philadelphia now. So if they don't go with this, you know who to point the finger to sit there and say, like, they're not complying with it and they're not allowing for it to happen because the state because the state is telling you it's okay. So if the city is the one that's holding them back, then the city is not really supporting the business aspect of this, where you could start to make some money back off of this. And I'm not saying that money's the only thing in this. No, don't get me wrong. They're allowing you to try to do it. How many different buildings have started to do this? It was like my dad texted me after watching the Rangers play the Devils, I guess it was, or something like that. Whenever the Rangers first welcomed fans back, and it was like 1,800 fans. And they're out there after they win a big game, the Rangers do, saluting the fans. The fans are all excited. There was a very clear edge there, and you're going, if you can do it, you should be able to do it. No one's asking for 20,000 people to come back to an arena right now, but they're asking for, whatever you can do, kind of. Like, if it's allowed, make it happen. And to everybody's credit, this thing came together from literally, I believe, something as early as like last weekend, being a discussion point. Oh, there might be fans back. No, wait, there's only going to 500. Like, I think that was Saturday, honestly.
Okay.
And that quickly, 3-4 days later, 3,100 people are coming back to watch Flyers and Sixers games there. Whenever the Sixers don't come back for almost another like few days, like almost another week, I think, before they have a home game. Like, they're back from their little break somewhere later this week, like Thursday, but they're on the road, so I think they don't play until like the first Sixers game is next Sunday, I think. That's as a home game, and the Flyers have like 4 in that. Like, that's the funny part to me. The Flyers are like gonna break the building in for 4 games before the Sixers get a game, before even that staff has to like do the floor switch,
Right. Well, and I'm sure that the in-arena staff appreciates the opportunity to run a couple dry runs. But either way, we'll see about 3,100 people at the game tonight, and that's interesting. And we're really, again, we're in a tough spot with that game because we're talking about that game right now before it actually happens, but this podcast will go up after it's released, so it really doesn't do us much good to talk about it.
No, it doesn't.
But we can look forward, and looking forward, there's a couple other games against the Washington Capitals this week, so tonight's game is still relevant. And then on Tuesday, the Flyers play Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, I like, as compared to the Pittsburgh thing, which we even said it was like a playoff series in the season, kind of, which was fun.
And it was a lot of fun.
And I even called it that. Like, I called it that before Tuesday's game. I'm like, your goal should be to win 2 out of 3, and obviously they didn't, so that's unfortunate. But that's how it's got to go, and it was a good early test. Now you're playing Washington 3 out of 4 games, which I like the break there because I feel like playing the same team 3 times in a row again, it's just going to create that same dynamic, and it just makes it a lot tougher for them, I don't expect them to have that kind of string of success when they're playing the same team 3 times over, especially when, they can wear them down a little bit like that.
Right. And we're talking about, big veteran teams with lots and lots and lots and lots of playoff experience. And that's not something that a large portion of the Flyers forward core has, and their defense core has. A lot of this defense core has played a bad series against Pittsburgh. Some of them played a bad series against Washington, and then whatever experience they got last year. And that's really it. And even over 3 regular season games, Sidney Crosby picks up a thing or two and exploits you in game 3. And you get these things that these big experienced teams do. And by game 3, you're just worn down.
Yeah, so that's why the Buffalo game comes at a great time, because
you've
played them 4 times this year already, and you've won 3 of them by the same score.
It's a nice palate cleanser.
And not allowed a goal, And I'm not sitting here saying that you're going to get away from go into another game and not give up a goal, but I sure don't think you're seeing a 6-1 game against this team anytime soon.
If you're seeing a 6-1 game, I think it's more likely to be in this team's favor at this point.
Well, I mean, let's just wait. Even yesterday, on Saturday, which I believe they played at the exact same time the Flyers did. Both games were in the afternoon, and the Sabres came out and scored 33 seconds into the game, and it wasn't just 33 seconds into the game get a goal, but a guy got his first NHL goal.
Okay.
In that time. And you're thinking, after the GM had to step out and address the media and kind of say everything's unacceptable, the coach is being looked at, evaluated closely as well, all that type of stuff, right? Like, you can feel the heat coming from, everywhere.
Oh, for the first time in history, Buffalo is warm.
Yeah, well, it's not the first time in history, but I get your point. No, but the Buffalo Sabres right now are that meme of the dog sitting in the burning house with the mug saying everything's fine, which is not the case at all. Like the fire is raging.
Jack Eichel might not be a Buffalo Sabre for much longer,
quite possibly, and he doesn't want to be traded per se. Like, he hasn't requested it. Is the point?
Oh, he hasn't publicly requested it.
Then that might just be a cover up, but whatever. But the bottom line is like you would think that a guy scoring his first NHL goal for a team that's struggling that bad 33 seconds in might actually spark them to something.
That should be a boost.
And then you realize how good the Islanders are now, Top of the division after being like a month and a half ago, being the team that we were going like, oh, is they the same team?
The Islanders have come back.
They've come back very strong. But the point I'm making is that even in that situation, just when you think that they've got something going for them that day, just when you think that they're going to find a way to beat a team that they have no right beating and kind of get out of this a little bit, they lost 5-2.
The
wasn't
Buffalo
a game.
The Buffalo Sabres have a way of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Like they really are. We talked about the Philadelphia Flyers being a good team. Mm-hmm. Part of what that means is finding ways to win. Buffalo's finding ways to lose, man. And it's,
pretty much.
It's tough to be a Buffalo fan at this point.
Right. And not only that, but so that's the respite that comes from this. Like, you're going to get this little break here that just, and I'm not saying to take the game lightly, but if you can kind of get hopefully the fans being back energizes you on the Sunday game. So you can find a way to maybe win that one, even though your legs are going to be tired. Yeah. Washington's got what you don't, which is the day off before. They played Friday. And not only that, but Washington also got manhandled in the game on Friday. They played Boston and ended up losing 5-1.
So they're not going to be very happy.
And the goal that was scored by Washington, I believe, came with something like 3 minutes left.
Yeah,
so
it was a shutout breaker.
5-0 blowout for the whole game. And I mean, we're talking from 1-0 in the first period to one situation where they took one player off of the ice because there was a fight, and next thing you know, there was 3 goals in the span of 5 minutes.
Yep.
And it was over like that.
And we're talking about a Washington Capitals team that's going to be very, very motivated in this Sunday evening game. They will also.
I'll pull back the curtain because I didn't post the preview yet, obviously, for the game. It's a little early for that right now as we record.
Sure.
But my player to watch, as is in typical fashion, is Alex Ovechkin because the penalty kill struggles for the Flyers right now, and if there's any area where he can expose you,
it's on the power play. We've seen it.
That's one, and two. The last time they played him, things weren't going so well for him, or he had a couple of rough games, and then came out and looked like
the slump buster.
Came out and looked like dominant Ovi.
Yep.
Ovechkin coming into this game in his last 5 games has 1 goal, 1 assist, and I'm going to make sure I get this right. 1 goal, 1 assist, and is a -5.
Whew. So
in the last 5 games.
Let's tally this up.
So he's going to score 2.
Right. Let's tally this up. Ovi's on a scoring slump. They just got blown out. They're going to be they are going to be without the services of Tom Wilson for a significant amount of time. Not significant enough, in my opinion. We'll talk about that in a second. But so we're talking about a Washington Capitals team that's going to be, shall we say, motivated. So this could be a fun event, and the Flyers are coming off of 3 physical, nasty games with the Pittsburgh Penguins, where you kind of got embarrassed a little bit on Saturday, and you didn't look like you had the effort. So if the Washington Capitals come with all the energy they should have, and the Philadelphia Flyers come with all the energy they should have, Sunday night could be a very entertaining hockey game.
Yeah, it could. And I think about, like I hope the fans do something to, or can be the spark, not do something, because of course they'll be doing something when they get there. They'll be, believe me, 3,100 people is still going to sound really loud, even though it doesn't feel like a lot.
And it's going to be 3,100 dedicated people. I've seen the ticket prices on StubHub.
Well, it might be. It's either going to be it's either going to be 3,100 lucky people who were picked among the season ticket holder types and things like that, or it's going
3,100 suits who could afford it.
I don't think the ticket prices are that high
given the circumstances.
No. Like, I don't think they're that high if you actually break through and get them from the team.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it necessarily means you have to be a suit to get one. Like, I know a lot of people.
No, I'm talking about secondary market prices.
Oh yeah, well, no,
Those are crazy.
I know you are. Like, I'm saying the dedicated people though are the ones that have been going for 40 years at this point, who are sitting there going,
yeah, sign guy's going to be there.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah,
sign guy's going to be there.
But where would you put him though? Because he's not going to be on camera.
Give him a camera. Remember back in the day when they used to put what's his face in the dancing in the corner in the third period? Do that with sign guy. Just flash to him all the time.
That'd be fun. I didn't think about that. I mean,
everybody loves sign guy.
Now here's the thing though. They're not, for fans anyway. You're not allowed to come in with like a sizable bag.
He has. Well, he doesn't. I don't know if he has a sizable bag.
File organizer.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's sizable. You got to make an exception for sign guy.
By their standards,
I know it is.
It's sizable.
Listen,
because their restrictions that came out are literally talking about, like, you can't even carry in a handbag. You can carry in a clutch.
Listen, I'm going to speak directly to Chuck Fletcher. Chuck, let sign guy in. Let him bring the folder in. Okay. I need to see the sign that said Coots. There it is, and I need to see the empty net.
Philly Joel.
The empty net. Insert goal here or whatever it is. We always holds it up to an empty net.
Grand opening.
Right. Like, listen.
Doesn't he have ones that say like next goalie or the bus is warming up or something? Yeah,
like that? He's a classic. Yeah, sign guy is an absolute icon in this fan base. And we need to treasure him more. He should get the next statue outside the Wells Fargo Center.
Okay.
Statue for sign guy. Calling it here. 2021. That's our petition.
Okay, now hang on a minute. If you were to give sign guy a statue, what sign is he holding? I'll tell you which one I think it should be, and it's a little bit of a it's an oldie, but
what did he hold up for the cup? Wasn't he there for that?
Well, I'm sure he was, but I don't recall seeing what it would have been.
Okay.
The one I'm thinking of is during the Red Army game. He had a sign that said "Tell it to the Czar."
Oh yeah. That's definitely. Listen, that is definitely the statue.
Okay.
That's the iconic.
In what proximity to the Ed Snyder statue are we talking about?
Standing directly behind Ed Snyder, holding the sign over Ed Snyder's shoulder.
Well, that would go
perfect.
It would go hand in hand if that's the sign he's holding, because that's the same game where Snyder said if they don't want to come back and play, they're not getting paid. So
tell it to the Czar. Yep.
Okay, there you go.
That's it. And I think we have titled this episode. We don't normally talk about that on the show, but listen.
No, but yeah, you know what? To put a common thread on it, I mean, how many Russian players do the Capitals
Washington Capitals have? Let's talk about that.
I mean,
Tom Wilson's not. That's okay.
No, Tom Wilson's not, and Tom Wilson's not playing this week, so that doesn't matter.
No, he's probably also not playing next week. So who else is Russian over there? Kuznetsov is still there. Is Backstrom Russian or is he Swedish?
No,
I think Backstrom's Swedish.
Yeah, but
Obi's there.
Samsonov is.
Samsonov,
the goalie.
Okay.
The goalie is, but he's almost not the number one right now. Like I feel like Vanachek is still the number one. I believe Vanachek is Czech.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. How did Vtech Vanachek become a starting NHL goalie out of absolutely nowhere?
I can tell you how he became that because because he played so well when Samsonov wasn't available. So literally that 4 games and the amount of time needed for him to get off of the coach, because you got to remember when they announced, like, I think people like assume that when it came down to it, it was like, oh, here's 4 guys that aren't able to play, and it says, oh, they're going to be out for 4 games due to COVID, right? So it was Ovechkin, Orlov, Kuznetsov, and Samsonov.
The Russians.
Right. And after the 4 games, Ovechkin came back and Orlov came back.
Right.
But Kuznetsov and Samsonov were on the list for a few extra days, missed a few more games. And in Samsonov's case in particular, when you're a goalie and you go a week or 2 without playing, you need to get stretched back out. You need to get some work in. You need way more time.
Right, especially because when you're on the COVID list, you can't even be in the facilities.
Right. You basically are stuck working out from home and doing your routine like workout, but you're not doing. And look, can that involve?
You can't even go get the sports massages and stuff.
Now, look, being at home, can that involve stretches? Sure, it can. I mean, there's ways to stretch at home, obviously,
but it's not the same as a physical or as a professional facility.
But or just getting on the ice in general. There's things you do that you have to do because you're on the ice a certain way, and so he missed enough time that all of a sudden they kept winning games, and Vanachek was in goal for like all of them.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me because you know how deep I go on hockey. I'm in some weird hockey leagues. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
And I had never heard the name Vtech Vanachek before this season. Somebody drafted him in my fantasy league, and I'm like, who is that?
I had heard his name from several years, and it's only because the minor leagues, the Phantoms play the Hershey Bears so frequently in a season all the time that this guy was always the goalie for Hershey. All the time.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about goalies. Sometimes they just lie in the AHL for 3, 4, sometimes 5 years, and then they come out of nowhere and they're great. Goalies are so crazy.
Jordan Binnington, everyone.
Listen, when do we give Alex Lyon another shot? When do we give Alex Lyon another shot? That's the real question.
Don't even start with me. Don't even start with me. After Tuesday's game,
if Carter Hart ever goes down, God forbid, Alex Lyon.
After Tuesday's game, as a comment on the takeaways that I did, where I was talking about Carter Hart as one of them, obviously, I actually got a comment that was something about Carter Hart needs a break. He shouldn't play Thursday. All right, maybe you can sit there and say he shouldn't play Thursday. That's fine. But it was literally someone said he needs practice. Sit him down for 3 weeks and let him practice. Bring Alex Lyon in. And I'm sitting here going, I don't care whatever. I don't care if you write good points for the rest of this thing, because the guy wrote like a lot.
Right.
But it's like, I don't care whatever else you have to say. It's just this already discredits you.
You have now burned your goalie. Congratulations.
Right.
He's going to tear everything in his lower body. He's going to tear everything in his lower body the second he steps on the ice. What are you doing?
Right. Well, not only that, but it's like, okay, that sounds great. You know, if you want to call out somebody else or sit there and defend somebody else who's as young as he is, then don't call out the goalie just because he's the most important position. I've watched this team for 4, 5, 6, 7 years closely like this, and I'm telling you right now, Carter Hart's not the problem by himself in any game that he's the way he's been playing.
No.
If his numbers look that bad, it has something to do with him, don't get me wrong, and I'll even credit, I think the guy led it off with he's playing too deep in his net. I don't disagree.
That's fair.
That's a fair assessment. But don't sit there and say because he's playing too deep in his net, that means he needs 3 weeks off. That's ridiculous.
Right. I actually just saw a breakdown. Charlie O'Connor did a breakdown on The Athletic of...
It was very good. I looked at it the other day.
The 43 goals that Carter Hart had let in up to the point he wrote the article. I'll be honest, I haven't actually read it yet.
Actually, I believe it came out before or after he had made...
Oh, after his most recent start?
So I think it came out Thursday, so it didn't include anything that he did. So... or any new games for him, I should say. What I'm saying, so it's up to date. I believe he's allowed because they've only allowed 64 goals as a team this year.
Right.
Brian Elliott has 9 games played now, I think. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that tracks about right. And Brian Elliott's played pretty well.
You got to remember, Brian Elliott's come in and played in games where he's finished things off for Carter Hart and still allowed a goal or two. I'm thinking of Carter Hart allowed 4 goals to Buffalo in the 6-1 loss, but so 2 of them were Elliott.
One of them was. No, they were both Brian Elliott. Yeah. And then I think there was another game where Carter Hart let in 5 and Brian Elliott let in 1 more.
Tahoe was 6, then 1.
Okay.
There's another one somewhere in there. I'm trying to think. I don't know because Carter Hart stayed in for the full 6-1 in Boston.
Yeah.
So he gave up 6 there. But Elliott's also allowed Elliott allowed 4 yesterday. So it went
Right.
from 60 to 64. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
these numbers
Like
make sense.
if you go into Thursday where Elliott allowed 3 and then allowed 4, on Thursday and then Saturday, what really they had was like something like 56 total goals allowed, and Hart was 43 of them. So I think that probably puts him up there because that means that Elliott would have allowed. It means Elliott would have allowed 13 goals in whatever number of games he had played, which makes sense because he had 2 shutouts. A lot of games are relief work.
Yeah, Brian Elliott's been really solid
really
this
good,
season.
and
He's been
that's
a
why, like,
solid backup.
I saw a mixed reaction because as much as that goal that he allowed to tie the game is egregious and soft, and you can't let it happen.
Bad.
How often has he allowed a bad goal this season? I mean, the only other one I can think of, and the game was over anyway. Against Buffalo, he had one that went off of a skate and then went through him. And
That's tough.
Hold on. It happened right in front of me, and I think the thing was moving 5 miles an hour. Like it wasn't a high speed. It wasn't a high speed off a skate in net. It was like a bleeder that just barely made its way through. But like
you mentioned that Brian Elliott's been very good this year. I'll go one step further. Brian Elliott doesn't really let up a ton of bad goals. Kind of full stop. Just over the last couple of years, he's generally in pretty good spots. Brian Elliott's a really solid backup, and I'm definitely glad the Flyers have decided that he is Carter Hart's mentor, and they've worked that out really well.
For people who I don't want to say who don't watch the games, but like people who watch the games kind of loosely or may miss a little bit of it, make an assumption when they see a number that it means that there was a bad goal allowed by Brian Elliott.
But often it's just not the case.
Right. Like, I'm not saying he doesn't allow bad goals, but you find me a goalie who doesn't allow a bad goal every once in a while. I mean, we've said this with some of the best, too. I mean, how many times over the last couple of years, especially as it's gone a different direction for him, have we said, boy, Henrik Lundqvist just looks like he doesn't have it, know? Or, take your pick. Braden
Tuukka Rask lets in his fair share of soft goals.
He can. Sure. Yeah, like
again,
there's not a goalie out there who doesn't allow a soft goal every so often.
Exactly.
There's a lot of times where it's a guessing game when you make a mistake and it's the way it goes. I mean, the
Pekka
other day,
Rinne let in soft goals all of last year.
Well, the other week, like maybe a week or two ago, if that, Calgary, I think it was David Riddick was in net. Goal made its way in from center ice. Happens every so often, know? And the goalie goes off and he's banging his head against the wall because he's sitting there going,
he's Mike Smith and he's a psychopath.
Well, but he's sitting there going, I can't believe that just happened. How embarrassing! And on top of it, like the way the game was already going, I let my team down. Like that type of stuff.
It's frustrating. Yeah,
it's frustrating, but it happens. It happens to a lot of goalies out there. So I'm not worried about soft goals here or there. But the number that's more damaging to me was so. We're talking about because Carter Hart has allowed 43 goals this season in whatever number of games. I believe he's up to 14 or 15 now, or 16, something like that. And the power play or the penalty kill, they've allowed 20 power play goals this season. Now, I just gave you the number of goals they've allowed all year.
Right.
They've played 21 games. They've played 21 games. They've allowed 64 goals. And I even wrote this as one of the takeaways following the Saturday game, because 64 goals in 21 games is an average of just over 3. It's like 3.05.
Right.
And I sit there and I go, is that great? No. But I factor in it's goals against per game. And there's a 6-1 loss here and a 6-1 loss there and a 7-3 loss here. And I go,
they do take them in chunks.
There's places where it evens out and you go, most of the time it's 2 or 3. And it levels itself out, because I just gave you 3 games by themselves, which means there's 18 other games I didn't even touch. And in those 3 games, I just gave you 19 goals.
Yeah, the 6 and 7 goal games are outliers that are blowing that number up over 3 for sure.
And so are the 3 shutouts.
Totally.
Like that evens it out too. So realistically, you're sitting here going, take away the 19 that I just gave you from those 3, which out of 64 brings you to 45 over 16 games. It's still about 3.
Right.
But 3
Man, I haven't taken a math class in a very long time. If you're asking me to do this sort of division, I'm not going to follow along.
I don't ask how I just did that on the fly like that. But okay. But I do have a problem with, and I'm going to do the fast math again, but this one I had preparation to do because I've already looked at that number. 20 goals against while killing a penalty out of 64. Now, I'm not
a third.
Right. I'm not a math expert, but that's about 1/3 of your goals against.
About 30%.
No, and that's not to say, okay, the team has allowed 2/3 of their goals at even strength. That's normal. Even strength can kind of go either way. But when you're going on the penalty kill that often, or not, maybe not that often, and giving up that number of goals, it's a killer. And
penalty kill has to get better.
Yeah,
is the long story short here. It's just not good enough.
But it's like I'm wondering how much. Like I'd love to know how. Like think about that. Like if Carter Hart's allowed 43 goals, how many of them have been while the team's shorthanded? Because then, at that case, like the goalie is the last line of defense without an extra guy out there. With how close is it to being a tap in or in? Like I said this after watching it before. Jared McCann scores on a rebound to get the game winning goal because he's right in front of the net. Brian Russ did it the other day. Chris Kreider had a hat trick by getting to the inside positioning 3 times.
Yep.
It's happened for, I'm going to say that I've called it pick your Boston player who you want to say got inside positioning, because Nick Ritchie's been there and David Pasternak's been there and Brad
Patrice Bergeron lives there.
Right. Like they're all there,
Hey, who's running the penalty kill?
Probably Lappy. But so this is not. I know where you're going with it. I just had this conversation.
I love Ian Barriere.
I know where you're going with this. What's this?
When is it time?
I know where you're going with this. I'm not sitting here telling you that they shouldn't have a better resource than that possibly to go to help improve this area.
When we blamed David Hackstall for the bad penalty kill and he got fired, the penalty kill was a decent reason why, right? Like the penalty kill was atrocious, and I think that's part of the reason he ended up getting fired.
Quite possibly.
Why did the same guy stay in charge of the penalty kill when the new coach came in? Why is that guy still employed and the penalty kill is still bad?
I don't know. The last thing, I'm going back to. I had this conversation. I guess I'll plug this. The on Open Ice Hits the Open Ice Hits podcast that I do with Hunter Brody,
featuring Hunter Brody, right?
Might as well be. He hosts it essentially, so it's I'm just his co-host. But we were talking about, one of the things we talked about was all the Montreal Canadiens coaching changes and all this stuff, and within the last
that's another mess.
Head coach, the assistant who ran the team in the playoffs.
Yep.
The guy who we talking about Brendan Gallagher in the playoffs, right? So they're gone. Then the goalie coach is gone.
And they didn't tell Carey Price, by the way, that they were firing the goalie coach.
And Mark Bergevin has a press conference. GM Mark Bergevin has a press conference and goes on this thing about everybody's being held accountable. Everybody has to be held accountable. And he goes, all I can do is give them the best resources behind the bench, but it's on the players to then go out and execute. And I don't disagree with that.
The media pressures in Montreal are weird, though, because Mark Bergevin cannot just get the best personnel for behind the bench. He has to get the best French-speaking personnel for behind the bench.
Okay, maybe so, but that's not.
And that's ridiculous.
Okay, but that's not the point. What I'm trying to say is that he's right about the fact that all you can do is put the best people behind there that guide them to it, that help instruct a little bit. But it's everybody else's job to execute. And quite honestly, how many times have they been scored in recent memory on a penalty kill? When the guy who took the penalty is somebody who is valuable to the penalty kill. Kevin Hayes taking penalties. Ivan Provorov taking penalties.
Sean Couturier's taken a couple of bad ones recently.
These are guys who can't take penalties because you need them out there to be the best penalty killers.
Especially when your penalty kill is already struggling.
I mean, at one point in time, I looked up, and this is no disrespect, but it's just the way it is. Like, I looked up at one point on Thursday, I believe, and Connor Bunnaman was killing a penalty.
Whew. You don't love that.
And I think it was when Hayes took a penalty, so I understand why. But it's like, do you realize, Kevin Hayes, that when you take that penalty in the third period, that the last line of defense is Connor Bunnaman's got to go out there, a guy who plays 5 minutes a night on the fourth line? It can't be that way. And that sets you up for that problem area, kind of.
Quick trivia for you. So you remember the home opener last year, the Philly home opener last year.
Yes, okay, sure.
The Taylor Hall 5-on-3 save.
Yes.
You know the save I'm talking about. Carter Hart. One of the saves of the year in the NHL last year.
And I had a great look at it, so yes, of course.
Who were the two flyers in the box?
Sean Couturier and Kevin Hayes.
Okay. Obviously you know that. So
I wrote it down, I'm sure.
Pulling back the curtain a little bit, we have the YWT group chat, and we've talked about it quite a lot. Friend of the show, Dom, loves throwing some trivia in there. And
well, when you said trivia question,
Kevin's very good.
Well, when you said trivia question, I thought you were digging back a little further than a game I watched last year. I do remember it. Like,
listen, it was before the pandemic, so it might as well have happened 25 years ago in my book.
So your theory was that I might not remember because it was a game that happened 20 years ago.
I could have sworn that game. I could have sworn that game was broadcast on Prism. That's how long ago I think it happened.
Okay, we're breaking out Prism. I think that means it's time to go.
It is time to go. You're right. A couple of big games this week, 3 against Washington, 1 against Buffalo. Again, obviously, there's that Washington game tonight that's in a little bit of a weird spot for us. You will have already seen it by the time you listen to this podcast.
And like we said, the one thing we did mention like slightly and didn't talk too much about, but that's important to the 3 games, Tom Wilson's suspended for 7.
Yeah,
so he's out for the week.
I think he should have gotten more. That's just me. The history he's got is crazy.
I'm surprised it wasn't a round number, if you know what I mean.
I'm surprised it wasn't 20 plus.
Okay, I didn't think they were gonna go 20. I thought he was getting 10.
Okay, that's fair. Either way, follow us on Twitter for more at YWT Podcast. We have more to talk about next week. We will be back next week. I'm here moving, still working on the setup. I look like I'm in a prison right now, but we're working on it.
No, you got a nice wall behind you. It's a nice backdrop for you.
Nice and white. I'm gonna put a poster up and then start drilling a hole through it.
It looks like it looks no different than it looks no different than what Broads uses for our other podcast for Open Ice Hits.
That's fair.
He kind of just has a plain wall behind him, but it works for him. I mean, he's working on some stuff too, but
either way,
it's always a work in progress. It takes a lot of work to get what's behind me.
It absolutely
you got to work
does.
kind of hard on it, and you're in the middle of moving, which is worse. So
it is worse. It's awful. Follow us on Twitter for more at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find the show everywhere. We're currently having an issue with Spotify. I don't know if you're aware, Kevin. The last couple episodes haven't posted.
Something a little bit, yeah.
Either way, we're working on it. We're trying to get back up on Spotify, but we are everywhere else: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, the whole 9 yards. We are also on sportstalkphilly.com. Make sure to follow everybody over here. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. I think I said that already, but we're getting out of here. I just wanted to plug it again. We will be back next week, and until then, see you later.